Not all heroes wear capes, some wear hoodies, keep their heads down, and carry discipline in silence. This story isn't about superpowers, it's about control, training, and knowing when to strike. When a teen finds himself outnumbered by a gang of reckless bikers, you'd expect him to run or freeze. But what they didn't know is, this teen has been preparing for moments like this his whole life. What happens next isn't just about fighting back, it's about standing your ground with dignity. Let's. It was a regular Saturday afternoon in a small suburban town. Sunny, calm, and quiet. Jake, a 16-year-old with messy hair and headphones in, was walking home from the gym, a duffel bag slung across his shoulder. He looked like any other teenager, slim, quiet, minding his own business. But behind that calm face was a different story. Jake had spent the last 6 years training in mixed martial arts. Not because he liked violence, but because he believed in being ready, not reactive. He never looked FO. As Jake walked past the old gas station on Oak Street, the low hum of engines caught his attention. For bikers, mid-20s, tattoos, leather jackets, laughing loudly and revving their bikes. They weren't from around here. Jake kept his eyes forward, not wanting any trouble. But one of the bikers noticed him and smirked. "Hey, pretty boy," the man yelled. Jake paused for half a second, then kept walking. He'd been taught to avoid conflict. But the biker wasn't done. "I'm talking to you." The man bar. The lead biker, big, loud, with a scar across his eyebrow, blocked Jake's path. "Where you headed, gym rat?" he asked mockingly, eyeing Jake's bag. Jake looked him in the eye, calm but firm. "Just going home," he said. The other bikers joined in, forming a loose circle. One of them pushed Jake's shoulder lightly, testing him. Jake didn't flinch. He didn't move. "What's in the bag?" another asked. "Weights? Or are you carrying your mom's purse in there?" They laughed. Jake stayed still, controlling. The tension in the air was sharp. A few people across the street noticed the scene but didn't intervene. The bikers looked confident, after all, they were older, bigger, and 4 against 1. One tried to yank Jake's bag. That was the mistake. With a swift pivot, Jake pulled it back, stepping into a defensive stance. The biker stumbled slightly. "Oh, looks like the kid's got some fight in him," one mocked. Jake didn't respond. His training kicked in: stay calm, don't swing first, wait for the M. Ku sidestepped, grabbed the biker's arm mid-swing, and with a fluid motion, threw him off balance. The biker hit the ground with a loud thud. The others were stunned for a second. "What the hell?" one shouted. Jake didn't gloat. He didn't pose. He simply reset his stance, balanced, calm, ready. The fallen biker groaned and scrambled up, anger replacing surprise. Now they weren't just messing around, they were furious. Jake had crossed a line in their minds. "You're gonna regret that, punk." 1G. 2 bikers lunged at once, big mistake. Jake ducked under the first punch, his elbow striking one square in the ribs. A quick spin, and his foot swept the other's leg, dropping him hard. Gasps came from nearby onlookers. Jake's movements were clean, efficient, no wasted energy. He wasn't fighting to hurt, he was fighting to stop. But even with 2 down, the last one, tall, built like a wall, was still standing. "You think you're tough, kid?" he said, cracking his knuckles. Jake stayed silent, adjust. The last biker stepped forward, his boots hitting the pavement like thunder. He was taller, broader, and clearly the leader. "Let's see what those gym sessions taught you," he snarled. Jake didn't answer. His hands were up, relaxed but ready. The biker rushed in with raw force, swinging wide. Jake ducked low, stepped in, and delivered a sharp strike to the ribs. It made the man stumble, but not fall. "You're dead now," he roared, charging again. Jake braced himself. This wasn't about power anymore. Jake didn't try to overpower him, he redirected. Using the man's momentum, he sidestepped and swept his back leg again. The biker crashed down hard, scraping his elbow on the pavement. He groaned in pain, staying down. All four bikers were now either on the ground or struggling to get up. Jake stood still, chest rising, sweat forming, heart pounding. But his eyes stayed sharp. He hadn't thrown wild punches or shouted threats, just calm, practiced defense. The small crowd that had gathered began moo. Jake picked up his duffel bag, still silent. He looked at the crowd, then back at the bikers, none of whom had the courage to stand in his way now. One clutched his side, another wiped blood from his lip. Jake didn't smile. He didn't brag. He just walked. His training had always taught him, win the fight, not the ego. As he turned the corner, a few bystanders tried to speak to him, but he kept walking. He wasn't doing this for fame. But across the street, a girl named Emma had seen everything, and Emma jogged after him, her camera still in hand. "Hey! Wait, what you just did? That was insane." Jake paused. "You alright?" he asked, noticing she was slightly out of breath. "Me? I'm fine, you just took down 4 guys like it was nothing." Jake shrugged. "They gave me no choice." Emma smiled. "Well, you might have just gone viral." Jake frowned. "Please don't post it." She raised an eyebrow. "Seriously? People need to see what happened. You didn't start it. You finished it, with class." Jake hesitated. Later that evening, the video hit social media despite Jake's request. Emma had blurred his face and tagged it, "Silent Strength." This teen stood up against bullies the right way. The video exploded, shares, likes, reactions flooding in. Comments praised the teen's calmness, discipline, and restraint. Jake sat in his room, watching the numbers climb, unsure how to feel. He didn't want to be famous. But maybe, just maybe, this could help others realize something: you don't need to be loud to be P. By the next morning, Jake's world had changed. His phone buzzed non-stop, even though no one knew his name. Local teens recognized his posture, his gym bag, his walk. Strangers at the gym whispered, "That's him, right?" Jake kept his head down. Fame wasn't what he trained for. But it was already out of his hands. Meanwhile, Emma received interview requests, people asking about the silent teen. She respected Jake's wish to stay anonymous, but the pressure was growing. Why are people so obsessed? At school, whispers followed Jake into every hallway. Some stared, others tried to secretly film him. Teachers even pulled him aside. "Jake, is it true?" one asked. He gave a quiet nod, already exhausted. The bikers hadn't returned, but they didn't need to. Their absence was a loud confirmation. But Jake hated the attention. "This isn't what I wanted," he told Emma when she caught up with him by the lockers. "I just wanted to walk home. That's it." Emma gave a sympathetic smile. "Yeah. But now, Later that week, something unexpected happened. A local dojo invited Jake to speak to younger kids, self-defense class. Jake hesitated. "I'm not a hero," he said. But Emma nudged him. "You don't have to be. Just share what you know. Help them feel safe." Jake finally agreed. When he entered the dojo, the kids looked up in awe. One raised his hand nervously. "Did you really fight 4 guys?" Jake chuckled softly. "I didn't fight. I defended." Big difference. His voice was calm, sincere. And for Th. Jake began teaching basic stances, showing how to stay balanced, how to breathe. It's not about fighting back with anger, he told them. It's about protecting yourself without becoming what you fear. The kids hung on to every word. Afterward, one small boy came up. I get picked on. A lot. I don't want to fight, but I don't want to feel scared either. Jake knelt to his level. Then we'll make sure you're not scared anymore. That night, Jake didn't feel like the quiet teen from last week. He felt. But not everyone was supportive. The bikers? They hadn't forgotten. One of them, still bruised and bitter, posted online, "Kid sucker punched us. Ain't over yet." The post got attention, and Jake saw it. His gut tightened. He knew retaliation was possible. They won't just walk away, he told Emma. She looked worried. What will you do? Jake took a deep breath. Stay ready. Stay smart. I don't want violence. But if they bring it to me again, I'll end it the same way I did before, without fear. Days passed, and Jake tried to return to his normal routine, early workouts, quiet walks, and school. But something had shifted. His posture was more confident, his eyes more alert. He could feel the weight of being watched, admired, even challenged. One afternoon, a group of older teens approached him at the park. Yo, you the fighter kid? One asked. Jake looked up from his bench. I'm just Jake, he said. They laughed. You're a legend, man. You need to teach us. Jake shook his head. This is. That night, Jake walked past the same gas station where it all began. It was quiet now, almost eerily so. The bikers hadn't returned physically, but online threats and comments hinted they weren't finished. Jake knew better than to act paranoid. But he also knew danger rarely announced itself. He glanced over his shoulder, mentally tracing exits and surroundings. His trainer's voice echoed in his mind, stay aware. The best fighters avoid the fight before it starts. Jake wasn't scared. He was PR. Emma called him the next morning, urgency in her voice. Jake, you need to see this. She sent a video, grainy security footage of a biker slashing tires outside a dojo. Jake recognized him immediately. They're escalating, she whispered. Jake clenched his jaw. This wasn't just about him anymore, it was about the community, the kids he'd spoken to, the place that welcomed him. I'll report it, he said. But I won't strike first. Emma nodded. You're doing the right thing. Still, Jake couldn't. Jake went straight to the dojo and showed the video to the instructor. The man sighed. We've had trouble with these guys before. They don't respect anything. Jake offered to help increase security, set up cameras, even walk the kids out after class. You don't have to do this, the instructor said. I do, Jake replied. They made it personal. That evening, Jake stayed after class, watching the street as families picked up their kids. It was peaceful, for now. But in Jake's mind, the next move. Later that week, Jake received an anonymous message. No name, no number. Just 6 words, we're not done. Stay ready, punk. Jake read it twice, then deleted it. He didn't need to reply. The message confirmed everything he'd expected. They were watching, waiting, testing his patience. But what they didn't realize was Jake wasn't alone anymore. The community respected him. Emma stood by him. And more importantly, Jake had become the calm before the storm. If they wanted a fight, they'd be walking. Emma grew more concerned as the days went on. You can't do this alone, she told Jake while they sat outside the school library. They're targeting you. Jake gave a calm nod. I'm not alone. I've got people who care now. That changes everything. Emma paused, searching his face. Just promise me. If it gets bad, you'll walk away. Jake smiled faintly. I only fight when I'm cornered. You've seen that. Emma reached over, gripping his hand. I just don't want to see you hurt. And in that quiet. But the tension broke again that Friday night. Jake was locking up the dojo after helping with classes when a motorcycle roared in the distance. Then another. Then two more. He froze, every sense alert. Headlights flashed through the alley. Four bikers, same jackets, same faces, pulled up and dismounted. Thought you were tough? The leader sneered. Jake's fists clenched, not from fear, but from focus. This place is for kids. Walk away. The leader spat. We're not here for the kids, hero. We're H. One charged first, cocky and careless. Jake ducked the punch and landed a clean elbow to the gut. The man dropped. The second tried to grab him from behind, but Jake spun out, using the man's weight to flip him over. The crowd from nearby restaurants started gathering, phones out. Emma, who had just arrived, gasped as she saw the chaos unfold. 2 down. 2 more to go. Jake kept his stance tight, his breathing steady. This time, he wasn't just defending himself. He was defending the dojo, the stew. The third biker was faster, stronger too. He lunged at Jake, fists flying wild. Jake took a hit to the shoulder, but responded with 2 quick strikes to the ribs and a final shove against the wall. The biker collapsed, wheezing. Now only the leader remained. He took off his jacket slowly. You think you're better than us? Jake stared him down. No. Just better than what you became. That line hit deep. The man charged, pure rage in his eyes. Jake didn't move. He waited. He listened. Then, in A.S. police sirens echoed in the distance. The fight was over. Jake stood over the bikers, chest rising slowly, adrenaline fading. Emma ran to him, tears in her eyes. You're bleeding, she said. Jake looked at the cut on his arm and shrugged. It'll heal. Officers arrived moments later, arresting the bikers while witnesses explained everything. One officer turned to Jake. You okay, son? Jake nodded. I'm good. But inside, he felt more than okay. For the first time, he felt free. The fear was gone. The video from that night exploded online. Again. Only this time, it wasn't just about a teen defending himself. It was about protecting something sacred, his community. News outlets picked it up. Unknown teen saves local dojo from gang attack. Jake's face, once blurred, was now known. Everyone had seen his calm under pressure, his precision, his restraint. Some hailed him as a hero. Others called him a vigilante. Jake ignored both. He wasn't interested in labels. But there was one thing he could. Jake declined every interview. Emma asked why. You've earned this. People want to hear your voice, she said. Jake looked out the window. They saw me fight. That's not the voice I want them to remember. Emma nodded slowly. Then what do you want them to remember? Jake took a deep breath. That I stayed calm. That I didn't strike first. That control is louder than rage. Emma smiled. Then you need to speak. Not for them, for the kid who thinks he's powerless. That hit Jake hard. She was right. The dojo organized a small community night. Parents, students, neighbors all showed up. Some came for the story. Others came for the message. Jake was invited to speak. He stood on the mat, nervous but steady. "I didn't plan to be here," he began. "I never asked for a fight. But when it came, I made a choice, to protect, not to punish. We all face something. Bullies, fear, doubt. But strength isn't loud. It's not anger. It's knowing who you are. Even when others try to shake it." The crowd clap. After the event, a father approached Jake with his young son. "My boy was scared to walk home alone," the man said. "But after seeing you, he wants to learn how to stand tall." Jake knelt beside the boy. "You don't need to be big to be brave. Just focused. Just aware. You ready for that?" The boy nodded, eyes wide. That small moment mattered more to Jake than any viral post. It wasn't about fighting anymore. It was about empowering. Emma caught the moment on camera, not for views, but as a remin. The following week, Jake officially joined the dojo's teaching staff part-time. It wasn't about the money, it was about giving back. Every student saw him as more than a fighter. He was proof that power could be silent, and protection could come without aggression. Meanwhile, the bikers faced serious charges. Witnesses, video evidence, and prior complaints stacked against them. Jake didn't attend the trial. He didn't need to. His part was done. Justice didn't always require fists. Sometimes, Word of Jake's journey reached beyond his town. A nonprofit that promoted youth self-defense reached out, inviting him to speak at a regional event. Jake hesitated. Public speaking still wasn't his thing. But Emma nudged him again. "You won't just be talking," she said. "You'll be reminding other kids they're not helpless." Jake agreed. On stage, surrounded by students and mentors, he told his story, calmly, honestly. No bravado. Just truth. "I didn't win because I fought," he said. "I won because." Meanwhile, Jake's school life changed too. Kids who once ignored him now asked for advice. Not just about fighting, but about confidence. "How do you stay calm?" they'd ask. Jake smiled. "Train your mind more than your fists." Even teachers noticed the shift. He was no longer the quiet kid, he was the steady one. But with recognition came pressure. People expected him to be unshakable. One afternoon, Jake sat alone behind the gym, headphones in, trying to breathe. Emma found him. "You okay?" That weekend, Jake visited his old martial arts mentor, Sensei Malik. The small garage-style dojo where it all started felt like home. "I've been watching you," Malik said. "You stayed grounded. That's rare." Jake smiled. "Didn't feel grounded. Just trying not to mess up." Malik laughed. "You didn't fight to be right. You fought to stay centered. That's martial arts at its core." They trained together for hours, in silence, like old times. No cameras. No questions. Just flow. And in that space, Emma had been filming behind the scenes, quiet clips of Jake training, helping kids, meditating after sessions. She stitched it into a short video, narrating softly, "He didn't fight for fame. He stood still while the world spun around him. And reminded us what calm strength looks like." The video went viral again. But this time, it wasn't about the fight, it was about the spirit. Messages poured in from around the world. "My son watches this every day. Thank you for showing my daughter strength." Then came the invitation that shook Jake, an international youth summit on resilience and leadership. All expenses paid. "They want you to speak," Emma said, handing him the envelope. Jake blinked. Me? He'd never left the country. The idea of stages, lights, crowds, it scared him more than any biker ever did. But he also knew fear wasn't a stop sign. If it helps someone feel less alone, he whispered, I'll go. He looked up at Emma. But you're coming with me. She smiled wide. Try and stop Em. The summit was in Tokyo, bright lights, tall buildings, a world Jake had never imagined being part of. As he and Emma landed, Jake sat silently by the window of the cab, watching the city blur past. You nervous? Emma asked. Jake nodded. More than I was that day at the gas station. She smiled. That means it matters. The venue was massive, hundreds of students from different countries. Jake would be the final speaker. I'm just a kid from a small town, he whispered to himself. But deep down. Backstage, Jake stared at his reflection. No hoodie, no bruises. Just him. Real. Quiet. Strong. When his name was called, he stepped into the light. The room fell silent. I'm not a hero, he began. I was scared. I was outnumbered. But I wasn't helpless. Because I had something most people overlook, control. He spoke about fear, about pressure, about choosing calm when chaos wants you loud. The world wants you to react. But sometimes, your greatest strength is your pause. When he finished, th. After the event, students from every corner of the globe came up to Jake. A girl from Brazil said, I get bullied. But now I know I can stand without striking. A boy from South Korea said, you reminded me that silence can be power. Jake felt overwhelmed. Not because they admired him, but because his story had reached them. He realized then, a single act of defense, done with honor, had created ripples across oceans. Emma took his hand later that night. You didn't just survive that day, she. Jake returned home changed. Not louder. Just clearer. His presence carried weight now, not because he demanded attention, but because he represented something real. He resumed training at the dojo, now full of new students. Parents brought their children, not to fight, but to learn control. Jake always started the same way, breathe. Before you move, breathe. Emma began documenting his journey more seriously, turning it into a small docuseries titled Stillness, The Strength Within. It wasn't flaw. Late one evening, Jake sat at his old spot, the bench near the gym, headphones in, city lights flickering in the background. Everything had changed. And yet, something inside him stayed the same. Grounded. Focused. A kid who didn't want trouble, but knew how to handle it when it came. A message pinged on his phone, another invite. Another stage. Another chance to help. He looked up at the stars, then down at his hands. Okay, he whispered. Let's keep going. Because the boy who once walked home. Jake's life began taking on a rhythm, school, training, speaking, mentoring. But he never let the noise outside drown the stillness inside. One afternoon, Emma handed him a letter. It was from the father of one of the original bikers. My son made mistakes, it read. But watching how you handled it changed the way our family talks about strength. Jake folded the note slowly. He didn't expect it, but it meant something. Forgiveness wasn't something he chased. But if his actions sparked it. That. Emma's documentary was finished, Stillness, The Strength Within premiered at a local theater. The room was packed. Not with celebrities, but with kids. Teachers. Parents. Quiet people who needed a reminder that strength didn't need to roar. As the screen faded to black, applause filled the room, not wild, but warm. Jake stood in the back, hands in his pockets. He wasn't craving the spotlight. But when he stepped forward, every eye turned toward him, not in awe, but in respect. He simply said, "Th." As weeks passed, Jake kept his routine, early mornings, disciplined training, walks through the same neighborhoods. But now, he wasn't the kid people passed without notice. People smiled. Nodded. Some asked for photos. Others just gave a thumbs up from across the street. And Jake? He stayed grounded. Emma often said, "You're the same person. Just taller in people's eyes." He'd smile and say, "I didn't grow taller. I just stood up straighter." And that was true. Not because he won a fight, but because. One day, Jake returned to that same gas station. Not because he had to, but because he chose to. He stood where it all started, took a deep breath, and just looked around. The pavement. The curb. The echoes of that moment still hung there, like ghosts long laid to rest. He wasn't angry. He wasn't afraid. He was grateful. That moment had tested him, but it hadn't broken him. It shaped him. A quiet storm that created clarity. Emma joined him a few minutes later. "You good?" she asked. Jake nodded. Emma smiled and reached into her bag. "I never showed you this," she said, handing Jake a framed photo. It was a still from her documentary, Jake mid-motion, steady, fierce, yet calm. The caption below read, "He didn't fight to win. He stood to protect." Jake held it for a long time. "This isn't just me," he whispered. "This is all of it. The fear. The training. The silence. The choice." Emma placed a hand on his shoulder. "And it changed everything." Jake looked up at the sky. "Yeah. But not just." Months passed. Seasons changed. Jake kept teaching, guiding, quietly growing into the kind of leader he never imagined he'd be. Not by force, not by title, but through presence. One evening, he was invited to speak at a graduation. Among the crowd sat students who used to be scared, now standing tall. Jake looked out and said, "You don't need to be fearless. Just willing. Willing to face what scares you. Willing to stand even when no one else does." His words weren't rehearsed, they were real. SPO. After the speech, a young girl approached him, no older than 12. She whispered, "I'm scared to walk home alone. But I want to be like you." Jake knelt beside her. "You don't have to be like me. You just have to be you, with your chin up, your eyes open, and your breath steady." She smiled, holding tightly to his words. And that moment, more than the fights, more than the viral videos, was the one that stayed with him. Because Jake had become what he once needed, a calm voice in chaos, a reminder. Emma and Jake sat on a rooftop that night, watching the city glow beneath the stars. "Do you ever think about how different things would have been if you hadn't stopped that day?" she asked. Jake exhaled slowly. "Sometimes. But I also think. Maybe that day didn't just find me. Maybe I was meant to meet it." Emma leaned her head on his shoulder. "You changed a lot of lives, you know." Jake smiled faintly. "Maybe. But the biggest one I changed was mine." And in that moment, without noise or cameras. Years later, they'd tell stories about a teen who stood up to a gang and didn't back down. But the real story, the one that mattered, wasn't about fists or fights. It was about a boy who chose discipline over ego, clarity over chaos, peace over rage. Jake's name would echo in halls, in dojo mats, in quiet whispers between kids learning how to stand up for themselves. And though the world would change, one truth would remain: the strongest force isn't the loudest voice. It's the one that stays steady.